One call and you're shut down, my mother said, lifting her plastic cup over the Super Bowl snacks, and 32 people in their red and gold jerseys laughed because they thought she was joking. She was not joking. 2 days later, the Maricopa County Environmental Services Department was at my kitchen. My meal prep business was under emergency review, and $186,470 in active contract revenue started collapsing in under a week. Then, 4 months later, a woman I had never met walked into a church fellowship hall and read one sentence off a fax receipt, and my father's smile left his face before she even finished it. My name is Ashley Morgan Hale. I'm 24 years old. Now let me take you back to Mesa, Arizona on Sunday, February 11th, 2024. Before I go on, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely connect with this story, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I always love seeing where you're all listening from. My parents, Linda and Scott Hale, live in a beige stucco house off East Brown Road in Northeast Mesa, in one of those subdivisions with identical gravel yards and 2 Palo Verde trees per lot. The Super Bowl party started at 4:30 in the afternoon. By 6:10, the living room smelled like buffalo chicken dip, beer foam, and my mother's cinnamon candle that always gave me a headache. There were 3 folding tables pushed together in the back for food, 2 coolers by the laundry room door, and the television volume was too loud for anyone to have a private conversation. I had come straight from Kitchen Junction on East Main Street, the commercial kitchen I rented by the hour for my meal prep company, Copper Whisk Meals. I was wearing black leggings, a gray quarter zip, and non-slip shoes because I had not bothered changing after packing 56 Monday delivery orders. My business was not a hobby. It was registered, licensed, inspected, insured, and exhausting. I had started it at 22 with 7 clients and 1 used Cambro carrier. I bought off Facebook Marketplace in Gilbert for $60. By February of 2024, I had 83 weekly subscribers and 3 corporate lunch contracts. One was with a dental group in Tempe for staff lunches twice a week. One was with a physical therapy practice in Chandler. The biggest one, the one I had been fighting for since November, was with a real estate office in Scottsdale for weekday lunch drops and event platters through the end of the year. Across signed agreements, scheduled invoices, and projected recurring orders, I had $186,470 lined up over the next 11 months. That number lived in my body, not the exciting kind, the fragile kind. It was my rent, my car payment, my business insurance, my food costs, my taxes, and the first honest idea I had ever had of getting out from under my family without needing anyone's permission. My mother liked to call it my little meal thing. At 6:17 during a commercial break, my cousin Marissa asked how business was going. She was standing by the island with a paper plate of jalapeno poppers. She meant it kindly. She had ordered from me twice after her C-section and told people my turkey meatballs saved her life for 1 week straight. Before I could answer, my mother touched the rim of her cup to mine and said very lightly, very cleanly, "Her little food hustle is doing well because no one has looked too closely yet." A few people laughed. I said, "Mom." She smiled. "I'm serious. The county only needs one honest call. Some of us are still old-fashioned enough to care whether our lunch was assembled in a real kitchen." I stared at her. 32 people is a strange number. It is too many for dignity and too few for anonymity. You can feel each face turn. My father was in his recliner in a Cardinals sweatshirt, though that was not even who was playing. He did not tell her to stop. My younger brother Evan grinned into his beer bottle and looked at the screen. My Aunt Cheryl made that tight mouth women make when they want no part of what is happening but absolutely plan to remember it. I said, "Everything is licensed." My mother took a sip and looked right past me at Marissa. If that were true, she would not get so defensive. That was the first wound, not the cruelty. I was used to that. It was how easily everyone accepted the possibility that I was dirty, dishonest, and temporary. I did not argue. I did not raise my voice. I picked up my plate, walked into the half bath off the hallway, locked the door, and wrote down the time in my notes app. 6:19 p.m., exact quote. Witnesses present. Mom holding blue plastic cup, dad in recliner, football volume high. I had been doing that since I was 19. My mother has a gift for saying the cruelest thing in the calmest voice in the room. It makes other people feel rude for noticing. When I came back out, the game was on again and the conversation had moved. My mother was spooning 7-layer dip onto Triscuits for my aunt. My father was shouting at a replay. I left at halftime. My mother called after me from the doorway, "Do not be dramatic, Ashley. Eat something before you go." I drove home on the Loop 101 with my jaw clenched so hard my molars ached. My apartment was in a 3-story complex off South Country Club Drive, 1 bedroom, second floor, beige carpet, ice maker that never worked. I got home at 8:42, fed my cat June, and opened the Google Drive folder where I kept everything related to my business: licenses, receipts, inspection reports, food handler cards, insurance certificates, vendor contacts, signed client agreements, screenshots, texts. I added a new subfolder labeled February 11, 2024, Super Bowl Party. Then I slept for 4 hours and got up at 3:37 Monday morning to roast 72 pounds of chicken. On Tuesday, February 13th at 10:14 a.m., while I was labeling containers of lemon dill salmon, I got a call from a blocked number. The woman on the line introduced herself as Dana Ruiz from Maricopa County Environmental Services. Her voice was matter of fact, not rude, which somehow made it worse. She said they had received a complaint alleging unsafe food handling, inaccurate temperature logs, and unlicensed residential prep tied to my business. She asked whether I was on site and whether an inspector could come that afternoon. I can still hear the compressor hum from the walk-in cooler when she said it. I told her yes, I was on site at Kitchen Junction until 1. She asked if I maintained batch records and holding logs. I said yes. She asked if I did any prep at my apartment. I said absolutely not. She said, "All right, we will come by." When I hung up, my hands were suddenly cold. If you have ever had that moment where you know your life is splitting into before and after, you know how quiet the room gets inside your own head. What made my stomach drop was not just the complaint, it was the detail. Temperature logs, residential prep, that was not random gossip. Somebody had enough information to sound credible. Keep listening, because the way I learned where they got it from was almost insultingly small. At 1:12 p.m., 2 county inspectors arrived. Dana Ruiz and a younger man named Trevor Miles. Both wore navy polos with county badges clipped at the chest. They were professional. They checked storage temperatures, sanitizer buckets, labeling, invoices, hand sink access, and my rental agreement with the kitchen. Dana asked for my prep logs for the last 30 days. I handed her a binder with tab dividers I had assembled myself at Staples in January. The logs were complete. The kitchen was clean. My permits were current. My thermometer calibration sheet was clipped at the back. She flipped through and stopped. Then she asked, "Do you have an alternate set of these forms?" I said no. She turned the binder toward me and tapped the lower right corner of one page. It was my logo, but the form layout was older. A template I had used in December before changing the formatting and adding lot fields in January. The complaint packet, she told me, had included sample temperature logs with my branding on them. The logs showed temperatures filled in at identical times across 6 days, in the same pen pressure, like they had all been written at once. They were not mine. They looked close enough to confuse someone who did not know my paperwork, but I knew every version I had ever printed. Dana asked where anyone outside my staff might have gotten branded documents. I almost laughed at the word staff. It was me, one part-time helper named Kiara on Wednesdays, and a rolling rack with a wheel that squealed. I told Dana only 2 people had ever had copies of my old client packet and sample logs at home. My mother, who insisted on helping me organize when I landed the Scottsdale contract in January, and my father, because my mother had spread everything across their dining table and made a show of being supportive for 2 straight Sundays. Dana did not react. She wrote something down. By 3:40, I had passed the physical inspection, but because the complaint alleged a second prep location and falsified records, Dana said they were opening a review and placing a temporary hold on expansion activity until they finished checking the complaint materials. It was not a closure in the dramatic TV sense. It was worse in the business sense. I could keep fulfilling current approved work under review, but anything new or recently added could be paused by clients once they learned there was an inquiry, and clients learned fast. At 5:26 that evening, the Scottsdale office manager, Lee Patterson, called me and said, Ashley, we got a courtesy notice from our building compliance contact that your business is under county review. We need to pause the February 19th launch until this is resolved. By Wednesday, the Chandler Physical Therapy Group postponed their spring wellness package add on. By Friday morning, the dental group asked for written confirmation that I was not operating out of a residence. They were polite. Everyone was polite while stepping back. Within 6 days, I had refunded $7,842 in prepaid deposits and lost projected contract revenue that made my knees weak when I added it up. $186,470 was the annual total tied to those relationships. I was not losing every cent that minute, but the path to that money was buckling in real time because someone wanted the county to think I was cutting corners. I knew who wanted that. Knowing and proving are different animals. Wednesday night at 8:18 p.m., my mother called. I let it ring 4 times and then answered on speaker while I wiped down my prep table. She said, "I hear you have had a difficult week." I said, "Where did you hear that?" There was a pause. Ice clinked in her glass. Mesa is not a large town if you're in food. Mesa has a population of over 500,000. My mother says things like that when she wants coincidence to sound like omniscience. I said, "Did you report my business?" She exhaled through her nose, that little performance of disappointment she uses when she wants to feel righteous. "Ashley, if your operation cannot survive scrutiny, then your problem is not me, it is your standards." I said, "Did you send my old forms to the county?" She said, "You're emotional. This is why people worry about you running anything public facing." I saved the call recording and emailed it to myself before I listened to it again. Then I wrote a summary in my folder. February 14th, 8:18 p.m. Mom does not deny, says if operation cannot survive scrutiny, problem is standards. I did not call back. I did not go over there. Instead, I made a list of every physical document my mother had touched on those January Sundays. That list changed everything. Now let me take you back to Sunday, January 7th, 2024, 5:20 p.m., my parents' dining room on East Brown Road. It smelled like pot roast and furniture polish. The dining table was covered in my business paperwork because I had made the mistake of accepting help. My mother had spent all of December telling relatives I needed adult systems. She said it at Christmas Eve when I brought roasted carrots and she asked, in front of 11 people, whether I had remembered permits this time. So when I got the Scottsdale contract on January 3rd, she offered to help me put together a proper client presentation binder. She used the voice she uses at church when she wants to sound generous. "You are good at cooking," she said. "You are not naturally organized. Let me make you look legitimate." I should have said no. Instead, I brought over my draft packet. Contract summary, insurance certificate, sample menu rotation, blank sample temperature logs, copies of my food establishment permit, business card sheets, a pricing page. She made tea in the blue willow cups she only uses when she wants to stage herself as a mother from a better family. My father sat at the end of the table paying bills and occasionally glancing over. At 6:03, my mother said, "These logs make you look amateur. A county person sees handwriting like this, and they assume corners are being cut." She took my December sample logs, the old ones, and said she would print a cleaner set from her friend Carol's printer because it fed paper more evenly. Carol Donnelly was a woman from church who sold monogram tote bags and inserted herself into everyone's business with a smile. I said no. I already had updated forms at home. My mother said, "Do not be defensive about help." My father never looked up. He said, "Let your mother do one thing for you." That sentence had been the shape of my life for years. Let your mother do one thing, then pay for it for months. On January 14th, I went back and found my packet sorted into neat piles. My mother had placed some copies into a green accordion folder labeled Copper Whisk. She said she had backups made because a young woman should never depend on one set of records. I took the folder home but later realized 2 sample log sheets and one old pricing page were missing. At the time, I assumed they were misfiled. On Thursday, February 15th, after the county call and after my mother's non-denial, I called Carol Donnelly. Her number was still in my phone from a fundraiser list. She answered on the second ring and sounded wary as soon as she heard my name. That told me more than her words did. I said, "Carol, I need to ask you something very specific. In January, did my mother bring any of my business paperwork to print?" She paused for 3 full seconds. I counted them because I was already recording in my state-approved single-party way, which in Arizona means if I am on the call, I can record it. I had learned that from a free legal clinic at the downtown library 2 years earlier after my parents told extended family I was threatening them with fake invoices. That is a different story. Carol finally said, Linda mentioned you asked for help. I said, did you see the papers? Another pause. Then carefully, I saw forms with your logo. I sat down on the kitchen floor beside my sink. I asked how many pages. She said maybe 15 or 16. I asked if she printed them. She said no. Her printer jammed, so Linda took photos on her phone and said she would send them elsewhere. I asked if anyone else was there. She said my father was in the car. I asked what day. She said January 9th, a Tuesday, around 11 in the morning because she had Bible study at noon and remembered being irritated. Then Carol said the sentence that opened the door. She also asked if the health department accepts faxed complaints or if it had to be online. I closed my eyes. I asked why she had not told me. Her answer was immediate, practiced, almost offended. Because it was not my place to involve myself in family misunderstanding. Family misunderstanding. Women like Carol use soft language for hard betrayals because it lets them keep their self-image clean. I thanked her, got off the phone, and typed up a call summary while the details were fresh. Then I emailed Dana Ruiz at the county. Subject line, additional context regarding complaint documents. I kept it factual. No accusation, no family drama. I explained that unauthorized copies of old sample forms may have been made in January without my permission, and a witness had information about questions asked regarding complaint submission methods. I attached current and prior versions of my logs with creation dates from my laptop and exported file metadata. I also attached my kitchen keycard records showing my actual prep times. Dana replied the next morning at 9:11 a.m. She asked if I could come to the county office in Phoenix with any supporting material. Friday, February 16th. I drove to 301 West Jefferson at 10 a.m. The county building smelled like copier toner and industrial carpet cleaner. Dana met me in a small conference room with a metal table and one fake ficus in the corner. I brought a banker box with tabbed folders, because if my parents had taught me anything useful, it was how to survive being disbelieved. Inside were my original templates: export dates from Canva, kitchen rental invoices, purchase receipts from Restaurant Depot in Tolleson, delivery route logs from Google Maps, and copies of texts from clients confirming on-site office drop-offs. Dana listened while I explained the January Sundays, the missing sample forms, and my mother's Super Bowl statement. Trevor Miles joined halfway through and asked only one question that mattered. Who else knew enough to mention fake temperatures in apartment prep? I said, only someone who saw old drafts and needed me to sound unsanitary. Dana nodded. She did not offer comfort. Professionals rarely do. What she offered was better process. She said the complaint packet had not come through the web portal. It had come by fax. The sending number on the cover page belonged to a FedEx office on East Southern Avenue in Mesa. They had already noted the transmission time, but had not yet pulled store details. She said if I wanted to provide anything else, now was the time. I handed her one more thing. A photo on my phone from January 14th of my parents' dining table. It was accidental. Taken because my niece looked cute holding a bread roll, but in the lower corner of the frame was the green accordion folder open to my copper whisk pages, 2 sample logs visible. My mother's handwriting on a sticky note attached to the stack. Dana looked at it for a long second and asked me to email the original file, not a screenshot. I did. That was the first time I felt the ground shift back under me. If you have ever been called crazy by people who are counting on your memory to fail, then you know the power of one original file with a timestamp attached to it. It is not dramatic, it is not cinematic, it is just solid. And solid is enough. Also, if this story is hitting somewhere tender for you, please like and subscribe. Stories like this matter because so many women were trained to second-guess the evidence in their own hands. The next 3 weeks were ugly in the quiet way. Not sirens, not screaming, emails, delays, clients asking for clarification. My mother telling relatives she was praying for wisdom in Ashley's business situation. My father calling once to say, "You should stop making this adversarial. Public health is serious," as if I had attacked myself. My brother Evan texted me on February 20th at 7:42 p.m. He wrote, "Mom says you're blaming her for your inspection. That's actually insane." I replied, "Did she fax my documents from FedEx office on Southern?" He left me on red. Then 3 days later, on Friday, February 23rd, my Aunt Cheryl called from the parking lot of a Safeway in Apache Junction because, in her words, she did not want Scott hearing this over Bluetooth. Cheryl is my father's sister. She has the posture of a woman who spent 20 years making herself smaller at family events and then got tired. She was at the Super Bowl party. She had heard my mother. She had said nothing. Now she said, "Your mother came into the laundry room during halftime and told me word for word, if the county asks, I only repeated concerns clients already had." I stopped moving. Cheryl continued, "I knew then she had already done something. I asked why she had not told me earlier. She said because I was hoping I was wrong. That is what silence usually is, not ignorance. Cowardice with nice packaging." I asked if she would repeat that if someone official asked. There was a long breath on the line. Shopping carts rattled somewhere behind her. Then she said, "If it comes to that, yes." I thanked her. I documented the call. Another folder, another date, another small brick. By March 1st, the practical damage was brutal. I had burned through nearly $12,000 in reserves, holding inventory lighter than normal and covering contract gaps. My rent of $1,685 was due. My auto payment on my silver 2019 Honda Civic was due. My kitchen block hours still had to be paid if I wanted to keep my slot. Kiara, my Wednesday helper, asked gently if she should look for something steadier. I told her yes. I still remember the smell of garlic and bleach while I said it. That was the week I stopped hoping my parents would back down. I started planning for the room where the truth would land. Now, let me take you back to Tuesday, March 5th, 2024, 2:20 p.m., the parking lot outside FedEx office on East Southern Avenue. The sky was white with heat even though it was still early spring. The asphalt smelled like hot rubber. Dana Ruiz had asked whether I could meet her there because the store manager was willing to discuss fax records in person. I almost did not go because I was afraid of looking desperate. Then I reminded myself that desperate is not the same as wrong. Inside, the store was all fluorescent light and printer ink. A woman named Teresa Nguyen met us at the counter. Mid-40s, black cardigan, silver name tag, no-nonsense face. She had not known me before that afternoon and did not care about my family. Those are the best kinds of witnesses. Dana asked Teresa to explain the store's fax transaction records. Teresa said each transaction kept a date, time, page count, destination number, and in some cases a rewards account identifier if the customer used one at the self-service kiosk or front counter. She had already pulled the transaction from Tuesday, January 9th at 11:23 a.m., 16 pages sent to a county number associated with complaint intake routing. Paid partly with a stored rewards phone number ending in 6142. That number was my mother's, not similar. Her exact phone number, the same one I had used for years to call her when I still believed emergencies changed people. Dana asked if Teresa could print the transaction detail. Teresa did. White paper, black toner, 1 page. At the bottom was the store number, date, time, page count, destination fax, and customer rewards line with a phone number. Teresa also said the counter employee on duty that morning had made a note because the customer had needed help refeeding a jammed page with food charts on it. The employee's name was Mia Salazar. Mia was not there that day, but Teresa called her from the back office. On speaker, Mia said she remembered a blonde woman with a church tote and a man waiting by the front windows because the woman was flustered and kept saying she needed the packet to go through cleanly because county people are picky. Mia did not know what county. She did not know who the people were. She just remembered helping feed pages. I stood there gripping the edge of the counter so hard my nails hurt. Teresa printed the note, too. Dana thanked her and asked if she would be willing to confirm the record later if needed. Teresa said yes. Then she looked at me for the first time with any softness and said, "You should keep copies somewhere they cannot get to." I almost laughed because I had already been doing that for years. That afternoon, Dana told me the review would likely be resolved soon because the complaint materials now raised serious credibility concerns. Again, she did not say comfort things. She said useful things. She asked me to send a written timeline from January 7th through the present. I sent it by 6:40 p.m., 23 pages, attachments labeled no adjectives unless necessary. On Monday, March 11th at 9:32 a.m., Dana emailed me the county's determination. The complaint was being reclassified as unsupported and malicious. My file would reflect that the documents submitted against my business were inconsistent with current records and tied to unauthorized third-party transmission. There would be no enforcement action against Copper Whisk Meals based on that complaint. I sat at my apartment counter and read the email 4 times, then I threw up in the sink. Relief does that sometimes. Not the movie kind, the body kind. The same day, I forwarded the determination to my paused clients with a short note and attached letter. The Chandler Group reinstated their add-on package within 48 hours. The dental practice resumed regular ordering. The Scottsdale office took longer because corporations like to act cautious after they have already let you bleed. But on March 20th, Lee Patterson called and said they were ready to resume the contract April 1st if I could still meet volume. I said yes before she finished the question. By then, though, I wanted more than my business back. I wanted the lie to land where my parents had built it. The opportunity came through church. My parents attended Desert Light Community Church in Mesa. They loved that church in the way some people love institutions that certify them in public. My mother ran the Women's Spring Luncheon Committee. My father had just gone in with 2 other men from the congregation on a side business called Harvest Table Events. They were trying to start a small church and banquet catering service, the kind that does memorial lunches, women's breakfasts, and wedding buffets in fellowship halls. They had announced it in the March bulletin with a little blurb and a photo of the 3 men standing by stainless chafers. My mother was insufferably proud. You already know where this is going. On Sunday, March 24th, after service, I was cornered by one of the pastor's wives near the coffee station. She smelled like vanilla lotion and said in a careful voice, "Your mother says there was a misunderstanding with county paperwork, but I'm glad it is all settled." Not, "I'm glad you are okay." Not, "I'm sorry, a misunderstanding." I smiled and said, yes, it was settled. Then I went home and called Dana Ruiz to ask one question. I said, if a person who made a malicious food safety complaint is publicly involved in a new catering business and the county asks for context on that person's credibility, are store fax records and witness notes something that can be confirmed if requested? Dana was quiet for a second. Then she said, if another department or business verification request reaches us, we answer truthfully from our file. That was enough. I did not threaten my parents. I did not post online. I did not send group texts. Instead, I answered one email honestly when it arrived. It came on Thursday, April 4th, at 3:16 p.m., from a woman named Sandra Bell, who sat on Desert Lights Events Committee. The church was considering whether Harvest Table events should be allowed preferred access to the fellowship kitchen for paid outside events. Sandra wrote that given recent community concerns, she wanted confirmation that there were no active county issues involving immediate family that could affect the church. I did not editorialize. I replied with the county's March 11th determination letter regarding my business, and I wrote one sentence, because the false complaint came through unauthorized documents transmitted by my mother from a Mesa FedEx store. The county may be able to answer any questions you have directly. That was all. People think revenge is shouting. Most of the time it is restraint with timestamps. If you have ever been pushed so hard you finally stop asking to be understood and start building a record instead, then you know this next part. A clean sentence in the right inbox can do more than years of family arguments. Stay with me, because the room where it all came apart was the same kind of room where my mother had always performed goodness best. The church scheduled a kitchen access meeting for Saturday, April 20th at 1 p.m. in the fellowship hall. Sandra Bell invited the 3 men involved in Harvest Table events, their spouses, one deacon who managed facilities, and because my name had come up in community concerns. Me. I almost declined. Then Sandra wrote back, it may be useful for everyone to hear the same information at the same time. So I went. The Desert Light Fellowship Hall had beige stackable chairs, humming fluorescent panels, and that permanent smell of coffee grounds and lemon disinfectant that every church kitchen seems to have. The meeting table was set up in a rectangle, plastic pitchers of water, A plate of grocery store cookies no one touched. There were 14 people in the room by 1:06 p.m. My mother wore a navy cardigan with pearl buttons and a silver cross necklace. My father wore khakis and a pale blue button-down with the sleeves rolled once, like he was trying to look hardworking but approachable. Sandra Bell sat at the head with a legal pad. Deacon Robert Vasquez, who handled facilities, had a thick folder in front of him. The other two catering partners, Joel Mercer and David Kim, looked mildly uncomfortable in the way men do when they suspect a church meeting may involve women who remember details better than they do. I took the seat on the long side of the table, 3 chairs down from my mother. I had a slim folder, a legal pad, and a bottle of water. Nothing dramatic. My hands were steady. Sandra started by saying the church wanted clarity before granting kitchen access to a business connected to recent food safety discussion. My mother immediately smiled the smile she uses when she wants to make concern sound childish. There was no issue, she said. Ashley had some paperwork confusion with her meal service, and because she is young, she took it personally. I said nothing. Sandra turned to me and asked if I wanted to respond. I said, the county cleared my business in writing on March 11th. I sent that letter to you. My mother leaned back. Exactly, settled. Then she added, I think it is unfortunate we are giving oxygen to gossip. There are women who know how to weaponize moderation. My mother is one of them. At 1:13 p.m., Sandra said someone from the county had agreed to stop by briefly because the church wanted direct guidance on food service credibility and kitchen use. My mother's face did not change, but my father looked up sharply. The room went very quiet. At 1:17, Dana Ruiz walked in with a canvas work bag and a manila file. She wore the same Navy County polo I had seen in February. Behind her came Teresa Nguyen from FedEx office in a black cardigan and slacks, carrying a single printed sheet in a clear sleeve. My mother actually frowned, not because she knew exactly who Teresa was, I think, but because she understood at once that the room had moved out of family language and into record language. Dana sat, opened the file, and said she was there only to answer factual questions about a prior complaint involving my business and whether it affected the church's decision-making around food safety trust. My mother tried to interrupt. I do not see why this is necessary. Dana, without looking at her, said, I am here because the church asked for factual clarification. Then Dana summarized. A complaint about copper whisk meals had been received in February alleging unsafe food handling and false record keeping. The complaint materials included outdated forms not matching current operational records. After review, the complaint was classified as unsupported and malicious. The transmission source of the complaint packet was traced to a Mesa FedEx office transaction linked to a customer rewards number. My father said very carefully, linked how? Dana nodded to Teresa. Teresa slid the clear sleeve onto the table toward Sandra Bell and said, in the tone of someone reading from a register tape, this is the transaction detail for Tuesday, January 9th, 2024. At 11:23 a.m., 16 pages faxed to the county intake line from our East Southern Avenue store. The rewards account used for the transaction ends in 6142 and is registered to Linda Hale. No one moved. The fluorescent lights buzzed. Somewhere in the kitchen, ice shifted in a machine. Teresa continued. Our employee note from that time states the customer needed assistance refeeding pages that included food charts. A male companion waited near the front windows. My mother looked at the paper and then at Sandra. Her face did not collapse. That would have been too human. Instead, something narrower happened. Her mouth lost shape. My father said there must be a mistake. Dana opened the county file and said, the destination number on that fax matches the number on the complaint cover sheet we received. The packet included unauthorized copies of Ms. Hale's outdated business forms. That is why the complaint was reclassified. One of the catering partners, Joel Mercer, turned to my father and asked, Scott, what exactly was sent? My father did not answer. Sandra Bell looked at my mother, then at the page, then back at my mother. Linda, my mother said one sentence. I was trying to protect people. That was it. No speech, no tears. Just that one practiced line, and even she could hear how thin it sounded in a room full of paper. Then Aunt Cheryl, who I had not known would attend, but who had slipped in along the back wall before the meeting started, spoke up from her chair near the coffee station. She said at the Super Bowl party, Linda told Ashley in front of everyone. One call and you're shut down. Then during halftime, she told me, if the county asks, I only repeated concerns clients already had. I said nothing then. I am saying it now. 14 people, absolute silence. I had been keeping that folder for 11 months, but it turned out I only needed one woman to stop being afraid for 12 seconds. My mother's eyes went to Cheryl first, not to me. Betrayal always shocks people more when it comes from the witness they assumed would keep protecting the performance. Deacon Robert Vasquez cleared his throat and asked Dana whether someone who made a malicious complaint like that should be involved in church kitchen access decisions. Dana answered carefully because she was still a professional in a church folding chair meeting, but the answer was enough. She said, I cannot make your policy. I can say our department treats knowingly false food safety complaints as misuse of the reporting system. It raises credibility concerns. That was the line. Credibility concerns, the rest happen quickly because once church people have a phrase that sounds respectable, they can act on almost anything. Sandra said the events committee would not approve harvest table events for kitchen access pending further review. Joel Mercer said he was not comfortable moving ahead with the partnership under these circumstances. David Kim agreed immediately. Robert Vasquez said the church could not risk its insurance or reputation by associating food service operations with people tied to a malicious complaint. Sandra added that Linda would need to step down from the spring luncheon committee while leadership reviewed conduct expectations. My father stared at the tabletop as if it had personally offended him. My mother looked at Teresa and said, You have no idea what family context sits behind a document like that. Teresa, bless her, said, No, ma'am. I only know what happened at my store. That line was so clean I almost smiled. Meeting adjourned at 1:39. People stood slowly, scraping chair legs over tile. No one rushed to comfort my parents. That may have been the most expensive part for them. Not money yet, social oxygen. As everyone was gathering their things, Joel Mercer told my father quietly, but not quietly enough, I want my $6,500 back by the end of the month. That was his startup contribution to Harvest Table events. I learned later David Kim asked for his $5,000 back too. The side business was dead before they printed menus. My mother remained seated for a moment after the room started emptying. Then she looked up at me and said, You would do this here. I said, You did it there first. I left before she could answer. Outside, the parking lot shimmered in the heat. It was 1:47 p.m. I sat in my Civic with the air conditioning blasting and my hands on the steering wheel until the shaking passed. Not because I doubted what happened, because my body had held that outcome in suspense for so long that it did not know what to do once it arrived. Winning is not peace. Sometimes it is just the first full breath after a long time underwater. The concrete price came in pieces. On April 23rd, Desert Light formally denied Harvest Table events access to the fellowship kitchen and any preferred vendor status for church events. Without that kitchen, my father's partnership dissolved. Joel Mercer got his $6,500 back after 2 angry weeks and a certified demand letter from his cousin, who apparently owns a print shop and writes the kind of letters men suddenly respect. David Kim got his $5,000 in 2 installments by May 15th. On April 26th, my mother was removed from the spring luncheon committee and from the volunteer meal train coordinator list. At that church, those roles were status. Losing them mattered to her in the way losing a title matters to people who built themselves out of public usefulness. By May, 3 women who had booked my mother informally for baby shower platters canceled. One switched to me, which was awkward but not awkward enough to turn down. On May 3rd, Sandra Bell emailed me that the church had circulated new kitchen reporting procedures because of recent misuse concerns. I did not ask for details, but Aunt Cheryl later told me my mother's name had come up in closed leadership meetings more than once. Once is gossip. More than once is identity. The county part had one more turn. On May 9th, Dana Ruiz called to tell me the department had flagged the complaint source internally for abuse of reporting channels. She could not give me every internal consequence, but she did say any future complaints from that same identified source would receive heightened scrutiny and verification. In plain language, my mother had burned her credibility with the one institution she tried to weaponize against me. That pleased me more than I expected. Financially, I did recover. Not instantly, not perfectly, but concretely. The Scottsdale real estate contract restarted April 1st, and by the end of June had generated $27,310 in paid invoices. The Chandler Clinic resumed their wellness package in May. I hired Kiara back for Wednesdays and Fridays in June at $19 an hour. By August 31st, Copper Whisk Meals had invoiced $94,620 since the March reinstatement. Not the full $186,470 yet, but enough to prove the damage had not finished me. In July, I moved out of the apartment off Country Club and into a small townhouse rental in Gilbert, with a second bedroom I used as an office. The first thing I unpacked was the banker box. The second was June's food bowls. I slept on the floor the first night because my mattress had not arrived yet, and the room smelled like fresh paint and cardboard. I remember thinking very clearly they do not know where I keep my spare key anymore. That sentence did more for my nervous system than therapy had in 3 months. People always ask whether my parents apologized. No. My father sent one email on May 12th with the subject line "Family Fracture." He wrote, "While your mother may have exercised poor judgment, your public handling of this matter was disproportionate and humiliating." He used the phrase "poor judgment" for a malicious complaint that nearly took my livelihood. I saved the email as a PDF and never responded. My mother left 3 voicemails over 2 weeks in the first. She said, "I hope your victory felt worth what it cost." In the second, she said she had acted from concern. In the third, she said nothing for 14 seconds and then hung up. I keep them in a folder labeled audio. Evan texted me in June asking if I was still doing this Cold War thing before asking whether I could cater his girlfriend's birthday. I did not answer that either. The only person who really crossed the distance honestly was Aunt Cheryl. In July, she met me at a coffee shop on North Power Road and said, "I should have told you at the party. I'm sorry I made you carry their version of reality alone for even one extra week." That was an apology, specific, late, but real. I told her thank you. If you have ever had someone apologize the right way after a lifetime of almosts, you know how startling it is. Not the dramatic kind, the relieving kind. It does not fix the original wound, it just stops one branch of it from growing. I still do not go to my parents' house. I have not been back to East Brown Road since the Super Bowl party. On Thanksgiving, I worked a prepaid meal pickup and spent the evening with Marissa and her kids instead. On Christmas Eve, my mother mailed me a card with no return address. Inside, she wrote, "Families survive when pride softens." No mention of the facts, no mention of the county, no mention of $186,470. Just pride, that favorite word of parents who need your silence to feel like virtue. I threw the card away after scanning it. People think a clean ending means forgiveness. I do not think that anymore. I got my business back. I got my name cleared in the right rooms. My mother lost her church standing. My father lost his catering deal, and both of them lost access to the easiest version of me. Those are real things. They matter. But there are still moments that catch in my throat. Grocery store rotisserie chicken smell. The buzz of fluorescent lights over a folding table. A plastic cup raised like a toast. My body remembers before my mind chooses to. That is the part winning does not erase. I am still careful with documents. I still export originals. I still keep 2 cloud backups and 1 physical copy in a locking file box under my desk. I still write down times after certain phone calls. Not because I'm trapped in it, because I learned exactly what I was dealing with. And because once the people who raised you decide to weaponize institutions instead of love, you either become easy to erase or very, very hard to lie about. I chose the second one. So when people order from Copper Whisk now, they get a clean invoice, labeled ingredients, delivery confirmation, and food that arrives on time. They also get a woman who knows precisely what paper can do in the wrong hands and in the right ones. Last month, on a Tuesday at 11:23 a.m., I noticed the time on my dashboard and laughed out loud in traffic on Baseline Road. Same minute as the fax. I took June home, unpacked a grocery bag, and went back to work. That is as close to closure as I can honestly give you. Not reconciliation, not a holiday movie, just this. They tried to have the county shut me down with my own paperwork. They failed. The county kept the record. The church heard it from strangers. Their business died before it began. Mine did not, and I am still here.